July is almost 7 days in, and this week's been pretty packed and already off to a strong start. New games, discoveries, and just a lot to keep coming back for. Hello friends, this is Mobo. Today we're checking out 20 new mobile games you absolutely need to try on Android and iOS. So first of all, this comes in almost highly recommended. Silver Palace actually came our way for a second time this week, and this time with the news that it's gonna publish a gameplay testing for players this July actually. So for those of you who missed it, in fact, Silver Palace is looking more and more like one of just the most promising anime RPGs of 2026 and 7. In fact, signups are live until July 16. Make sure to sign up right now. There's a lot of hype around it. In fact, developers just released a new gameplay trailer and it generated over 2 million times in just 2 days. Silver Palace is also set in a Victorian era open world with detective investigation pacing at its core strategy. It's got Unreal Engine 5 graphics that honestly look closer to a PC game right now. I would say if beta lives up to the trailer, this could legitimately end up being one of the biggest launches we've ever seen on mobile and probably even win a Game Award. Up at number 2, we've got Lumberjack Sim, and it's not the one we mentioned, for the past couple of weeks, but something of a sort of updated and almost HD version of the original game. So yeah, right off the bat, it's one of those games that completely caught us off guard. It looks like another sim game. Like once you start chopping your first tree, you realize it's actually trying to simulate the whole process. You don't just tap a button, watch a tree disappear. You make the cuts yourself, trim the branches, repair old pickups on top, and will eventually build a real business. This one is definitely easy to get hooked on.
Thank you.
Down to number 3, we've got, in fact, this one's a nostalgia hit, so if you grew up with arcades, it's gonna hit you right in the spot. So Metal Slug Rush actually came out today and it's legit. It takes everything that made the series so iconic, reshapes it in a survival style roguelike, and it just works really good. So it's a survival sort of rush game where you're railing through rebel soldiers, pirates and Mars people while grabbing upgrades every few seconds and eventually building some absolutely crazy build on the go. It still has the pixel art, the classic announcer saying heavy machine gun, still unmistakably Metal Slug, but it also feels very fresh. Say you've been addicted to games like Survivor.io or basically roguelikes in general, Star Blaster's gonna feel instantly familiar just the same, but with like a sci-fi twist this time. You're leveling up mid-run, stacking abilities, etc., so you can create completely broken builds that just melts everything on screen, just like the previous, just like Metal Slug Rush. And this one's also offline, surprisingly polished game, and for just $1, honestly, it's just one of those easy recommendations if you're into roguelikes. Highly recommend it. The same folks who made the Lumberjack Sim we talked about at number 2 in the video, they've also made this one, Gold Rush Miner Simulator, And I'll argue it's mainly for folks who watched gold mining shows and thought to themselves, well, ain't this fun? And it's just whatever you liked about that and turn it into a video game. And it's actually pretty good, you start with just a metal detective and just a shovel, then you gotta work your way through every step of the process yourself. Digging, washing dirt, sorting the ore, smelting full into bars, crafting jewelry, even repairing tractors and excavators. So it's a real addictive game because you're doing everything yourself. Same problem with Lumberjack Sim, it's pretty easy to get hooked on. Down to number 6, we've got Grand Outlaws Mobile, and it's as of this morning finally out globally, so you're gonna be fine playing it regardless of your region. This game, which we did mention before obviously, is probably one of the closest we've had to a proper Grand Theft Auto game. Like you get a huge online open world where you can drive, do pretty much anything you could do in Grand Theft Auto. Developers in fact took the extra time and the delayed bought time to pack in more locations, better performance, and also load up on content. Think of it as PUBG, but with in the style of the Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Skull Hero, however, is a kind of action RPG that's just all about a satisfying grind. You start off getting wrecked until every run makes you a little stronger and turn tables on your enemies that used to take you. It's a simple action RPG with a neat hack and slash combat, boss fights, just a constant sense of growth that makes it really easy to lose track of time. If you enjoy games that feel naturally rewarding, this one's definitely worth a look. It's been in development in fact for a little over a year, so it's, you could say, in pretty good shape as well. Down at number 8, we've got a PC horror game ported to Android from India called Nanima. It's a little familiar at first, but then you play it and start noticing something, at least in a few ways different. The game is legitimately inspired by the Granny games, but instead of, copying the formula, it sort of builds everything around Indian folklore and culture. Like you're searching in this old grandmother's house while solving puzzles and hiding from a possessed nanny, and you're gonna be doing that at your own pace. Also, the Hindi voice acting makes it feel a little more authentic. It's a free game, it's offline, it's around 200 megabytes in total.
A head and can attach to different bodies.
Headhunters actually reminded me why I sort of like my job, like digging through, finding new games. On paper, playing as a rolling head that steals different bodies sounds, of course, very ridiculous, but then that's exactly why this game works. Every body gives you new weapons and abilities, so matches do keep changing on the fly. Then physics also create the kind of comedy you couldn't even script if you tried. Bizarre, a little bizarre, creative, and refreshingly different from like the usual arena fighters. Honestly, that's the kind of game that makes me smile just because somebody had the guts to actually make it. Many Legends Clash of Realms at number 10 is another idle RPG, but this one actually rewards you for putting a little bit of thinking into it. It's a pretty simple game until you just start messing around with the team formations and hero builds and see just the magic happen. I also like the fact that it doesn't overwhelm you early on. It eases you in, then slowly opens up the modes, upgrades, and realizing a single character can just completely change how a fight plays out. It's got that satisfying idle progression loop we all know, but with just enough strategy to keep you involved as well. Does any of you remember the game Acecraft and maybe Cuphead? Well, there is an even better looking game in a few ways in fact, that leans a little more on that style called Haunted Headlines, where you're sent into this mansion and you're just on your way out trying to figure out what's real and what's trying to seem real. But the real hook, since it's a sort of a roguelike game, is the risk versus greed system. There's a lot of loot everywhere, but going deeper always feels like a bad idea until you do it anyway. Pretty good game, it's about 1 GB in total, it plays online and is available on Android. Coming in at number 12, we've got Abyssal Soul. I've said this exact set of words before, this is basically Slay the Spire and Dark Souls' little cousin in a way. And it's finally out through a beta testing for everybody. All you gotta do is just register the game on the Play Store and you're good to go. So the game's a roguelike deck builder with this Bloodborne style theme and a combat system that actually tries something new instead of just copy pasting. It's like a mobile game pretending it escaped from a gothic library of video games and made it over as casually as possible on Android and iOS. Check it out in case you missed it, it's actually coming out officially worldwide on July 30. Iron Muscle just got a spiritual successor called Iron Lady. Definitely not a game for everyone. It's a sort of a pretty unique sim game, mostly because we don't really get bodybuilding games like this on mobile, where instead of like racing or beating your competitors, you're just building the perfect physique one workout at a time. You train different muscle groups, manage your nutrition, customize your athletes, and eventually step on stage to compete. It's a pretty nice loop. So say if you've ever actually enjoyed those sim games where everything feels earned, this is definitely worth checking out at least. This actually took almost 12 years since its original game, but Bouncy Basketball just came out with a successor and nearly 10 million downloads on the first game. And it's actually sitting now on Android for free. So yeah. For those of you who did miss it, it's another one of those old school mobile games that sort of makes you realize why mobile games are addictive in general. And the reason is it's just one button, just a couple of things to control, and somehow just a minute in you're telling yourself, where did my last 3 hours disappear? The physics is still hilarious, but they've sort of cleaned up the pixel art looks a little nicer now. There's also more depth to the game itself.
On top of that, the hero summon system ties into this really well.
Ragnarok Twilight Global is another new take on the old Ragnarok formula, for those of you missed it, but this one sort of leans into making it as smooth and rewarding as basically possible. Like the moment you jump in, you recognize the familiar town, the music. In fact, personally what stood out to me is how faster it is, compared to previous games. Gear drops come constantly and levels feel really quick, and the game almost always gives you something to work toward. It doesn't have that old school grind Ragnarok veterans remember, instead it's sort of built around steady progression and lots of idle rewards and just a pretty colorful world as well. Drift Rivals actually reminded me of the good old days when every new mobile racer tried to be like the next big thing. Although the difference here is that it actually has some good ambition. You've got a big open city to cruise around, plenty of visual customization, drifting, races, speed cars, and a reward system that really keeps you enough reasons to come back to. It's still a little rough in places, but the driving's pretty enjoyable, and say if developers keep polishing it, this could grow into one of those racing games people randomly discover months later and wonder how they actually missed it. Number 17, we've got Jiwa or Jiwa Kalima, which finally made its way to iOS alongside the Android version, and it's now available globally. All of that for free actually. And I would say it's not your typical idle RPG, but definitely one to try. There's actually some strategy and this 30-slot battle system where every hero placement and troop combination give you something to learn. The dark fantasy is pretty nice, progression is very generous, and there's plenty of PvP content to keep you busy for days. If you like idle RPGs but want something that makes you think a little bit, give this one a try. Number 18, we have The Legend of Tartar, and don't let the tiny little download size fool you, because this one's a surprisingly addictive little idle gem, meaning the combat plays itself, but the fun comes from putting together the right skills and combinations to build a working team. Pretty simple game, very charming. It's just one of those games you keep checking back because there's always something to do and another upgrade waiting for you. So look, if you're into lightweight idle RPGs with just a pretty good loop, this one's highly recommended. Number 19, we've got Viper. It's actually a pretty quick mention I wanted to give. It's just one of those small little indie RPGs that doesn't try to reinvent anything. Instead, it just focuses on being fun. You explore, fight around, fight tougher enemies, upgrade whatever gear you've got, and bit by bit overcome stronger enemies as you go. It's pretty lightweight, completely offline, and has an old school action feel where the simple gameplay loop is what keeps pulling you back. I'd argue that sometimes it's just basically all you really need. And last but not least, we've got Scalemaster, which is still in beta, so right off the bat, don't expect a finished MMORPG just yet, but I personally do really like where it is headed. So the catch in this game is the skill system, because it actually lets you try different combinations of skills instead of locking you into a single playstyle. The world itself is still growing and there's definitely more room for improvements, but also that's, another reason why it's exactly interesting to keep an eye out for. And I'll even say that it actually feels like, the kind of game that could become something much bigger over time. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. I'll see you again tomorrow.